One of the things that we say a lot is that the universe always says yes. And I was in a conversation, I've gotten over 200 episodes of the podcast, 200 weekly episodes. And Carol, my co-host, continues to hearken back to when she first met me. And I mentioned that the universe always says yes. And it made her, it was like the doggy head tilt. You know, when you make a high-pitched noise for a puppy and it goes. Because she kind of understood what I was talking about, but the universe always says yes is really powerful, especially if we're thinking about, as somebody had mentioned before, submitting to the will of God, which is where basically we have to do whatever it is that power outside of ourselves is has foisted upon us. It doesn't work that way. There's a creative law that is responding to conscious intention, and it always says yes. In fact, the universe don't know no. And it's one of those things where if I have pain in my shoulder and all I'm thinking about is the pain in my shoulder, and what I want to do is have the pain in my shoulder go away, and I do a prayer about the pain in my shoulder, then it's not only not going to go away, it's probably going to get worse and be more active for me because I'm focusing on that which I do not want. I can't have not pain. What do I want to have instead of pain? The universe always says yes. And we end our prayers by saying yes, and so it is. So it's a partnership. We know that the universe is saying yes, and we are agreeing with the creative law, setting an intention, making an invitation, having a thought, and that activates the law. And then we are in partnership with that infinite creative power. Yes, and so it is. And it works on all levels of life, all levels of our experience, from the most subtle to the most grand and sweeping. If you think about it, whatever your creation story is, wherever you think all of this stuff came from, everything in the world around us, and this works for people who are atheists or non-believers or simply believe that this is all one big happy coincidence. Okay, it's one big happy coincidence. Things have been like sort of stumbling along through the entire course of history, and it has gotten us to this point. Okay, great. Then we're in partnership with that big happy coincidence because it's created all of this. It's got a lot of power to create. It can create something new. So perhaps we are involved in that coincidence somehow through conscious intention, and we can create something new. And the cool thing is that this is a principle. It is a creative law that is always responding, and it responds to our words, whether we are at church, or we are sitting in nature, or we're sitting in the midst of our resistance and saying that it doesn't work. It's always working. It doesn't know no. It's always saying yes. And so it is. So we get to participate in that creative process. And if we believe in Scripture, in the beginning there was darkness and void. So there was nothing. And God said, let there be light. So, all right, there was God. So there was darkness and void in God. And God said, let there be. So an intention, and then there was. And then there was light was the law responding to that intention. So it's been working since the very beginning of time. And Scripture has another half dozen or so things that God said, let there be, before we got to the day of rest. And then there's a bunch of begats, so the story continues to unfold, and that has led to where each of us is. Same process, same universal law, saying yes, don't know no. The Big Bang story is the same thing told in a different language. In the beginning there was a singularity, this impossibly dense spot, and then for whatever reason, it began expanding or exploding. It was pure energy to begin with, and then it turned itself into particles, and the particles turned themselves into other particles, and they formed into stuff and elements and planets and stars and people and all the rest of that. And the physicists have a great understanding of how a lot of those pieces have come together. So again, that's a creative process that's been in operation for a while, and it continues to be in operation. So we get to use that. We get to set an intention, have an understanding about how that creative process is going to work for us, and then let it go to work. So along about March, I took a bunch of these. Hopefully I get close enough to the camera that you can see that. That is a tomato seed. And I took a bunch of those, probably 18 or so tomato seeds, and I carefully planted them in a thing under a light in my basement. And about 6 of them grew to the point where they were upstanding little plants. And then along about May, I put them out in the garden and did some work on that. And now, my intention was not to have a basement full of tomato seedlings. I did not really have any interest in that. And my intention was not to have the little grow lights churning for some period of time. So I had an idea of what it was I wanted to have in my experience. And that idea, the attention and intention that I put into that, and then all of the activities that I took part in, led to tomatoes. And so here's this one, the further intention of this tomato is to be part of my lunch today after the celebration. And they're pretty good tomatoes. And there were some things that happened along the way that were not part of the plan. I think 3 or 4 of the little tomato seedlings got out to the garden and put up the trellises that they could grow into. Had no intention that they would get so big and heavy that the trellis would collapse 4 times now. Part of the process. The intention was tomatoes. And my willingness was planting the seeds, cultivating them, prepping the garden, doing the weeding, setting up the trellis, and now dealing with the ongoing harvest that I'm experiencing. That's the creative law. It's always responding. It's always saying yes. Now, it is possible for me to sit there in March and say, I really want to have tomatoes, and not get around to planting them. So I don't get to start them in the basement. Okay, and I've done that in the past, and I've had to order the seedlings that are already grown. Somebody else has grown them for the first 6 or 8 weeks, and then plant those in the garden. Or I can forget until the middle of June, in which case I've missed tomato season. I mean, I can go out and buy tomatoes, and there might be some wonderful ones, but it's not going to be the same process. So the law is always responding. It's responding to what you think. It's responding to what you say. It's responding to what you hear. But really, it's responding to what you believe. So I was talking to somebody in a practitioner session today, and this is someone who's trained as a practitioner. And one of the things that she learned to do was when somebody said something that was objectionable to her, like a second party statement, saying, well, this is what happens when you get this, when you do that. And so she had learned to, in her mind, say, cancel. I cancel that. I cancel you. And she said that out loud to a doctor. And the doctor was quite offended that she was saying that out loud. I cancel you. And he says, what are you talking about? But what she was doing was identifying that here is a thought, an idea, a concept that's being projected onto her that she doesn't agree with. And she doesn't want that to be part of her belief system. So she is putting up a forceful objection. No, that doesn't have anything to do with me, because she wanted to be able to focus on the experience that she wanted to have. And we all get to do that. So sometimes there are voices that come in from outside, and I sometimes find myself quietly saying, cancel, this does not apply. This is not the truth of me. And so there are 2 conversations going on. There's one where the person's making these obnoxious statements, and there's the other one inside of my head where I'm translating it into the truth that I want to be accepting. Sometimes I disengage from those conversations, and a lot of times it's pretty quickly because it's exhausting. But sometimes those disturbing thoughts come from within. They show up inside, that little nagging voice in our head, the committee of judgment or whatever is going on. It'll come up with a disturbing thought about an illness that I have, or something not going well in my life, or something that I would be fearful of or worry about, or something that would cause me discomfort or is causing me discomfort. We're doing another one of those listening sessions this evening. You're not alone, because there are a lot of people who are trying to live in peace and harmony in a world, and specifically a country, that has grown in a lot of ways uncomfortable. And what we want to be able to do is understand that's what's coming in, that's what's landing on me, and I just want to be able to deal with that and be that bright light that I am. I don't want to put my head in the sand. I don't want to pretend that it's not true. I want to be able to deal with it. And when that judgment or doubt or nagging thought comes from within, what we want to do is pivot. To take that thought of, I'm coming down with something, or this pain is leading to something worse, or there's not going to be enough fill in the blank, money, love, health, comfort. What we want to do is understand what that thought is and turn around. What do I want to have instead of that? If I'm feeling like a sniffle coming on, well, I don't want my sniffle to go away. How do I want to feel once it's gone away? Because the universe don't know no. If all I'm thinking about is the sniffle, if all I'm thinking about is the way that my toe hurts, that's what's going to keep on coming about. The universe always says yes. So I need to be able to pivot and stake a claim and activate the creative law to bring something that I am desiring into life. Yes. The answer is going to be yes. And then we get to say, and so it is. And sometimes we're having an experience that we don't like, or one of those nagging thoughts. And we need to acknowledge that that came from somewhere. So when that voice of doubt, that voice of worry comes up, we want to pivot to the experience we want to have instead. But the other thing, and this is something that's relatively new in my tweaking of this new thought philosophy, is run toward it. Where did that come from? How is it that I'm having this thought about the sniffle, or about the pain, or about the loss, or about the lack? Investigate it. It's there for a reason. And we can very easily pivot and go off in a different direction. But if there's something to it, if there's something that caused that thought or that fear or that belief to bubble up inside of us, it's going to come up again. So it doesn't give it any power as we investigate it and ask, what's it telling me? And the technique can be as simple as, okay, Spirit, what is this experience, pain, distraction telling me? And then we get to shut up and listen. That's what meditation is for. To quiet ourselves, to put ourselves in a space where if there's an answer available, we can hear it. We can find out what it's telling us. And again, there's no power. There's no power necessarily in that inquiry, as long as we know that we're doing it for information and for insight and for guidance. What is the highest and best unfolding for me now? What are my next perfect steps? What am I to learn from this aspect of experience? How is this change bringing something different, new into my life? It is completely possible. It's completely possible for that goodness to come into our lives in a way that is exactly what we would expect, or that is completely different. So what we want to do is allow ourselves to realign with the awareness and the understanding of what's going on in our lives. To do the prayer work, to be able to pivot to the experience we want to be having instead, to open that, and to know that the answer is yes. Because when the experience has been one that we don't particularly like, we can say yes, and so it is, up until now. That is what has been. And I'm not denying it, I'm not I'm not pretending that it didn't happen, or that it's not part of what's going on. Yes, and so it is up until now. And then I get to be free to choose something different. And I set a new intention, and I release it into that creative law that creates everything. And I know the answer is going to be yes. And then I can let it go. And so it is. And we each can do that. We can each do that in our own way. So that's the invitation. If there's something that's coming up for you, dive into it. Explore it. See what it's telling you. See what newness is possible for you. Use that to help you set a bigger, broader intention, to make that pivot be even more powerful. Claim you're good. Do your prayer. Let it go. Yes, and so it is. Thank you.